Hi, today we are in Berlin with medneo. Nico, who are you and what do you do?
Well, thanks for being here, first of all. I'm glad that you're here. medneo, what is medneo doing? So maybe I tell you a little bit where we come from, so that gives you a very good introduction. So my two co-founders and myself, we met each other at Siemens Healthcare. So we've been there for many years. I personally was there for nearly 11 years. And we always discover the same two issues there, and that's the founding principle what we're doing with medneo. First of all, we saw that the utilization of the very expensive and heavy diagnostic imaging technologies is very, very low. So in any other industry that wouldn't be possible. So in the airline industry, if the plane is standing as much on the ground and an MRI is not running, you can't afford a flight anymore. That was the first observation. Second observation was that more and more customers from those medical device manufacturers like Siemens, GE and so on, they were asking for flexible purchasing options or your utilization models like I only pay for a patient, which is really difficult for a medical device manufacturer because they can't influence the utilization rate. So I always compare that with a car rental agency. Car rental agency can't manage the utilization of a car if the car is standing in your parking lot and you have the keys for it. And that's exactly the case if you bring that device to a hospital or to an outpatient center, you can't influence the utilization. And those two things are the cornerstone of what we are actually doing. We are operating, or we're building and operating diagnostic imaging centers and operating them as a medical technical service provider, not as a doctor, not as a physician, not as a medical service provider. So the radiologists, the doctors, those are our customers. They're independent, they're their own entrepreneurs, they can stay independent, they don't have to commit to MVZ in Germany, like outpatient center or whatever. They're their own entrepreneurs. They are our customers, but they're only taking care of the medical part, and that's what they learned in university, and that's why they started to be a doctor. And everything else is done by medneo, starting from the scheduling of a patient, so when a patient wants to have an appointment, to the management of a patient in the diagnostic center, the image acquisition process, how to scan a patient. So that's all done by medneo with our own staff, with our own experts. Then after the image acquisition, the radiologist gets the images on our IT infrastructure. That's also something we developed on our own to enable all those process efficiency steps what we're doing. He does the interpretation, writes the final report, and after that we take over again. We send out the report to the referring physician, to the patient, handling the invoicing stuff in the name of the radiologist. It's the patient of the radiologist, it's not our patient, but we are doing all the organizational and administrative things again. And so, as I said, the radiologist can concentrate on being a doctor, and we can concentrate on, well, all the other aspects that are important to run a business.
Great. Have there been any challenges when you started this business, and how did you overcome them?
In general, we are quite happy where we're standing right now. The first challenge, of course, was getting out of a huge company with my two co-founders. So what's the right time to jump, so to say? What are the important partners? What's the important network we want to take with us and further utilize in the future? That was the first big step what we've taken, and I assume most of the founders have to take this step as well. And well, then afterwards it was of course important from having those general ideas and those cornerstones I just described to actually get into the market, being really operational, knowing every bit of the process details, what to focus on. And of course, gaining the trust of the medical service providers, so the doctors. At the beginning, that was the hardest part, because for our first diagnostic center, we had to convince them with a PowerPoint presentation, more or less. For all the other centers, it was quite a major step to be much easier. because now we can invite them, they can see how we are actually working, how the process is working, what we're actually doing, and experience that. And so it's way easier to convince them and to gain the trust that we can do that as being non-doctors or non-experts in their perception. And that was certainly one of the major things at the beginning. It just turns out that being not doctor is now becoming more and more important for us, or more and more a benefit while talking to doctors, because the differentiation or the scope of what they're doing and what we are doing is so clear. So we can't do the medical part, and that's our core focus. We say we don't do anything in that arena, but we take care of all the rest.
One core competency of yours is that you really try to utilize the fixed assets much more efficient than anybody else on the market. How do you do it?
What is utilization? Utilization is how many examinations you do per MRI device per time, per year, whatever. And well, in general, if you want to do that with an airplane, you have also two measures what you can implement. You can see that the plane is flying all the time and it's not standing on the ground. And you can see that the utilization, so the seat load factor is increased, and that's exactly the same what we are doing as well. We have very long opening hours. So at the moment here in Berlin, we are operating 18 hours a day, so from 6 in the morning to midnight. And we'll come to the next question if the patients are coming at that time. So, they do actually. And the second part is, of course, how many patients we can do per hour or per time. And that's also hugely depending on the process efficiency. And there you can do really, really a lot without being those not very nice environments for a patient where he always feels to be in a hurry. Our process efficiency measures are indeed bringing more time to the patient while still being more efficient. And with those two levers, we increase the utilization way more than any other radiology center in Germany, or well, actually not only in Germany, is doing.
On the one hand side, you have this fixed assets, but on the other hand, you also said that you provide some kind of software service to the radiologists. Can you tell us a little bit more whether you developed this by your own and on what type of functions you are focusing?
Yeah, so IT is one of the key differentiators in our process. So because it supports our process on all aspects. And in general, in a radiology department, you're using two different kind of IT systems for your operational process. So one system is the image management system, where you can store this huge data files, huge image files, what such a device is actually delivering, how to manage that, how to store that, how to make that secure, and also manage the viewing, where the radiologist actually is looking at the images and then writing his report, his conclusions, if there's something damaged in some body region. So, and that's one of the systems. And the second system is the workflow management system, where all the patient data is stored, all the medical record, medical history, also the whole workflow is supported from the scheduling part, which is for us a very, very important part, because in the scheduling we determine the utilization. So that's the key aspect of the process step. So whatever works right in the scheduling part will work right in the diagnostic centers later. Yeah. But also all the process steps within the diagnostic center, that's all managed by this workflow system. And this workflow system was completely developed by our own. So at the beginning we had to make a choice if we use a system that is out there. But most of the systems also in the medical arena especially are very old and they tend to be very shut down, very closed, no interfaces, while always saying it has to be secure, but having no interfaces has nothing to do with being secure or not, as we learned from other industries. And our system is, well, it's the total opposite. It's a very flexible, very open system, while still being very, very secure and having the right authentication measures. And this is very, very important, not only for our core business model, where we are running and operating diagnostic imaging centers on our own, but also for all future activities, what we are doing, that we can leverage those IT possibilities, what we are having.
Nico, let's talk about the corporate strategy of medneo. Right now you have two, let's say, diagnostic centers, one in Berlin and one in Potsdam. Mm-hmm. And what I found very interesting is that both of them are run a little bit different, mm-hmm. and that also your future, you have some other thoughts on how you would like to operate in the market. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, sure. Our core business model, as I just described and we were talking about, is that we invest in all the equipment, we run the diagnostic imaging centers, and we have a pay-per-use model for medical service providers. That's our core model, and that works very, very good for developed markets. Not only Germany, all Central Europe, US, etc. So that's a model for those kind of markets. For developing countries, it's a total different game. For them, it's not the question if they can afford an MRI system or they can afford other imaging technology. It's for them the question, can they operate it? And operating it is always three different aspects that have to come together. The first aspect is infrastructure. Being able to actually operate the infrastructure, keep it alive. And there's only electricity, cooling, interfaces to building technology, only to name a few of them, and that's really, really hard if you're in developing countries, and I saw that myself in the recent years a lot. So that's the first aspect you really have to manage. The second aspect is you need experts in operating the medical devices, so radiographers, so the medical technical expertise to acquire the image. And then the third aspect is the medical expertise to do the interpretation of the image, to say, okay, what's wrong with the patient, and give the doctors then an indication, the referring physicians, how to proceed with the patient. So those three things have to come together. So, and for us, that's exactly what we are focusing. Infrastructure, we are now establishing not only a radiology that we can build in an existing building, like we've done here in Berlin, but we developed a modular concept where we are using a standard ISO containers, so shipping containers, so pure shipping containers, that we actually use as modules. So it's not that we bind them together and place a radiology inside, but really each container is a module. So we have a container for the medical devices, we have a container for the entrance area, we have a container for the restrooms, for the building technology, for the cooling, and we can even have containers for electricity generation and so on. And with this infrastructure, we are able to pre-manufacture everything here in Germany together with a partner. So we are not a manufacturing company, but we are the integrator. So the know-how is on our side for all the bits of the technology. And we pre-manufacture that up to a rate of 85% roughly. And we can then ship it to developing countries, and we basically need a basement there where we can place the containers, and everything else we will bring to those countries. So not only the containers and the infrastructure, but as I said, also the electricity, internet via satellite. So these are all the things we can actually do. Mm-hmm. That's the infrastructure part. let's jump to the third aspect, the medical part, before we come to the second one. The third aspect is the medical expertise. And that's actually something we are actually doing already, based on our IT infrastructure we were developing on our own. We're able to connect other radiologies from all over the world via very, very thin internet cables, so with a high latency, with low bandwidth. And we already have a few very interesting projects. Our first one was actually in Nigeria, where all the other bigger IT companies said it's impossible to connect them, and we said, well, that's just the right reference case for us. And we connected a hospital there. They have a CT, they have an MRI, they have a conventional X-ray, they have a mammography device, but they don't have a radiologist there. And there's also not a radiologist close by. The next one is a couple hundred kilometers away. So, and for them, that's really a problem, because well, they have some expensive devices there, but actually the results, well, if you don't have the expertise, then it's hard. So what we've done there, we installed our IT infrastructure. They can send their images directly from the scanner, so from those devices directly in our infrastructure. The images are transferred to our network, and now the radiologists who are collaborating with us, so our customers, and here the whole thing turns a bit around, can earn additional money by actually working in this teleradiology field and helping those developing countries while earning money for their own business. So that's the third part. The second part, and that's something we are using now also our location in Potsdam as an R&D location, where we actually develop the possibility to remote control such a scanner. That we can bring the medical technical expertise, what we are having here in Berlin or in Germany in general, to those countries and actually guide the scan from remote. You always need somebody locally to take care of the patient, to place the patient on the table and do everything that is necessary locally. But running the very complex image acquisition procedure, that's something we believe we can do remotely, and that's one of the R&D things we are developing right now. And then we have all three parts together to run the radiology, well, anywhere in the world.
You only would need a partner who can operate it and make sure that it's cool, enough electricity is going then?
Well, actually we can provide that as well.
Okay.
We can provide cooling, we can provide electricity there if requested or if needed, so that's something that we can bring to the table. What we are not doing with those projects, we don't take the utilization risk.
Nico, can you tell us something about the market of radiologists? So, like, how much revenue are they generating, for example, in Germany or in Europe, and how this compares to Nigeria or the US?
Yeah, well, there's a very funny comparison actually, that in Munich there are more MRI scanners than in complete Northern Africa. So, and that also gives you an indication that there's quite some room to catch up for them. What I found is a very interesting figure, how many MRI scans per inhabitants you have, and that also shows which countries are developing in which area. In Germany, like Switzerland, in the US, you have between 9 and 10 MRI examinations per 100 inhabitants per year. So that's a rough rate you can calculate on. If you look a little bit around, like Eastern Europe, well, depending on the country, of course, but you have rates between 2.5 to 4 examinations or examinations per 100 inhabitants per year. If you look at Russia, you are below 1. If you look in Africa, you can hardly count it, so that indicates that there's a lot of room to catch up. And of course, those are the countries we will look at for our first business model, where we do the utilization in the developed countries. And of course, there are the The country is very interesting with increasing gross domestic product, because we found that the correlation between MRI scans and the gross domestic product is really linear. Yeah. So it can't be more precise actually. Okay. And so that's pretty clear where we can go in this regard. And for our infrastructure solution, as I said, developing countries are the core focus, like Africa, Middle East. So at the beginning we would prefer to stay in our time zones, plus minus. But of course, Asia and Americas is also very interesting for the future.
So my perception is that the medneo business model is quite unique in Germany. Is there some similar business model also working in the US or Canada?
Not exactly. So you have big radiology chains, and that's something you can find also in Germany, where radiologists hired other radiologists and have a bigger chain, and doing that usually quite regional. So they have a very high presence in the regional market. But you don't have one exact example for whole Germany, and that's very similar to other countries as well. With all the benefits and also the issues that you have to solve while being a radiologist, hiring other radiologists. So usually the management and the service levels of such a model is not comparable to what we are doing. The key differentiation being a technical provider and being experts in the technology field is not that strong. And I think the biggest difference is that the radiologists who are working there, they are employees. They are not entrepreneurs, and that's the major difference into our model. So as I said, in our model, all our customers are their own entrepreneurs, radiologists themselves, or working together with hospitals, of course, as well. And they are being their own organization, and we don't hire them, and that's the key differentiator. And I haven't seen that in Germany, and up to my knowledge, I haven't seen that anywhere else.
We always try to help people and get some advice so they don't make as much errors as they would have been, maybe. What would be your advice for first-time entrepreneurs? And maybe you can also give some light into what advice would you give on if you have a business model that is very capital intensive?
Well, they're two totally different things. You have to see. First part, as I said, is always financing, of course, and having a business model that is quite capital intensive. You have to see how you structure your financing needs. So if you want to do everything with equity, then that's a problem for your own shares, more or less. It's quite stable, but you have to see how to. If you want to have a debt financing, for instance, to mix that, you really have to see how to get your feet on the ground as fast as possible and have a functioning and working operational business, because that's the only reasons or the only arguments you have to a bank that you have operating cash flow and the whole thing is working. So that's very, very important. In terms of equity, search for partners. You feel there's also a cultural fit. So I know many entrepreneurs are saying that, but I definitely believe in that. So there are times when you don't meet the plans. Well, at least I heard that. We don't have that so far. But you need people as a sparring partner. So for me, or for us as a founding team, we are coming from a big organization, and big organization has always the opportunity or the advantage that you get a lot of advice from people around you, at least from your boss, from time to time. So now, being our own bosses, it's still important to get advice and to get some additional ideas. And while very often you don't get an honest advice from your employees, you need to search for your own network, and here also your shareholders or your investors can be, and well, from my perspective, should be a very good sparring partner in that regard. Well, other terms of advice is don't forget to take care of your customers and your network. So that's really important. Having a great idea and well, managing all the details is great, but yeah, try to be operational as soon as possible, and yeah, I think that's one of the key things why we are here where we already are.
Thank you very much, Nico.
Thanks for being here.